The Ultra is back. What actually happened? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I've seen in the comments that some of you aren't fully appraised of what happened recently with regard to the Ultra channel, and it's evidently the case that you were not aware of my other pre-existing channel, Knowing the Narcissist, where I made a couple of important announcements. Therefore, it's important for me to ensure that my valuable viewers are fully informed as to what has been happening so that you're not kept in the dark, and also to ensure that you can get rid of any misinformation that you are witnessing out there on the internet that might be put forward by those clowns who think that they can detract from the important work of the Ultra. Briefly, I started writing about narcissism many years ago, essentially journaling and chronicling my own observations about my family, my colleagues, those that I've dealt with in a professional capacity, friends, sexual partners, and so forth, vis-a-vis narcissism. I spot my kind very easily and identify the various subschools throughout the various stratas of my engagements and fuel matrices. Furthermore, I've also observed the dynamic between them and victims, and have also then understood the nature of our victims to enable me to distill this information to help you as part of the extension of my legacy. 7 years to this day, I started my blog, Knowing the Narcissist, and provided article after article explaining the thoughts, actions, and behaviours of narcissists, some from my perspective, some from the different types of perspectives, different subschools, talking about the dynamic various facets of it, creating a loyal following, and thereafter providing consultations to people to help them navigate their way out of their ensnarements. In 2016, I started up a YouTube channel, Knowing the Narcissist, which still continues to this day. I would only upload there intermittently, utilising mainly narration of my existing articles. The sound quality wasn't the best, as I was doing a lot of travelling and therefore had to utilise the microphone upon a laptop. That channel became demonetised in approximately June 2019 as a consequence of YouTube deciding that, as I came to gather, that the use of static images meant that it wasn't appropriate for it to be video material, which seems rather strange to me because at the end of the day, many videos are just people's talking heads, which are no more interesting than a thumbnail. It's the quality of the information that matters. Of course, many of my videos do contain video analyses, photo analyses, and therefore there is more contained within them, but that's by the by. I therefore focused on other matters, and shortly thereafter created the Ultra channel, but did nothing with it until October 2020, and then continued apace, providing you with a vast, prodigious output of videos explaining so many different facets of narcissism, creating many new videos, re-recording existing material and expanding upon it to improve the sound quality, and of course, my epic analyses of famous and infamous people, including the prominent example of Harry's wife. As part of all of that, I then embarked upon a narration of the Tom Bower Buck Revenge. And in so doing, it wasn't a straight reading. What I sought to do was basically take the material which Mr. Bower had unearthed, compare it with other evidence, question the relevance and accuracy of it all, and largely, of course, be supportive of it, but also then explain all the various facets of narcissism, the narcissistic dynamic, narcissistic indicators and interactions, so that you could really understand what was going on. Whilst Mr. Bower himself has acknowledged that Harry's wife is a narcissist, it's clear that he doesn't, and why would he, fully understand what all of that means. He is not an expert in narcissism. His forte, of course, is biographies. I did all of that, and therefore it wasn't a standalone reading, but rather it was an enhanced state of affairs which added so much more to it. There was an argument that each video was a fair use of a section of the book, with me talking through the aspects of narcissism and then sometimes pausing to expand upon the wider range of it all. I did all of that, and it was extremely well received, seeing many views and an increase in subscribers, and garnered much praise. Having then completed the series, unfortunately, the owners of the copyright, namely the publishers of the work, saw fit to issue a complaint to YouTube about an alleged breach of copyright. They didn't approach me direct, for reasons which are unknown to me, but rather sought to do so through YouTube. And because there were numerous videos, this resulted in numerous copyright claims and, thereafter, copyright strikes. Because of the number of copyright strikes that occurred, this then meant that the channel was threatened with termination. You'll be aware, of course, on the internet that a certain clown thinks that he was behind all of this. He wasn't. He, of course, has placed himself very firmly on my radar, and that's something I will be dealing with in due course. But like any good general, one never gives away one's strategy. You don't tell the enemy what you're up to. The fact is that those that claimed that they were behind the removal of the channel were not, and it was simply a case that those that work at the enforcement arm of Viacom CBS saw fit to issue the copyright claims, protecting the copyright of the author, and thus copyright strikes were thus imposed upon me. In order to address that, there were two options available to me. The first was to argue fair use. The alternative was, encouraged by YouTube, to approach them direct and go straight to the heart of the matter and deal with the copyright complainant and plead my case, explaining what's gone on. I decided to do that. Thus, of course, the removal of the videos that had been flagged as a copyright infringement was a threat to my control, and I dealt with the threat to that control directly by contacting CBS Viacom. I explained to them that there was an argument for fair use. I also explained that I would agree to the removal of the videos on the basis that they would withdraw their copyright strikes against me, or rather retract the copyright claim, which would then undo the copyright strikes and preserve my channel. From my perspective, the videos had served their purpose. Whilst I appreciate there were some people who were still listening to them, and there may be others in the future, the bulk of the listening was already done, and therefore it was appropriate for me to agree, in order to preserve my channel, that they be removed. I'm pleased to say that Viacom CBS adopted a very sensible and amicable approach to this, not only responding in a timely fashion, but noting that this would achieve what they required, namely, the protection of the copyright, without having to disrupt my channel. An accord and an agreement was reached. That was then done, and I implemented the removal of the offending videos, and they then promptly wrote in an email to YouTube. The email some of you will have seen, because I published it in other videos, and it was an attachment to those that the many, many thousands of you that emailed me. I provided you with that written message at an early juncture once the channel had been taken down. Notwithstanding the fact that Viacom CBS contacted YouTube in a timely fashion to tell them that they now withdrew all of their copyright complaints and therefore all of the copyright strikes should be removed, and the fact that 2 further reminders were sent to them given the impending deadline of the 26th of August, the channel went down. I received no notification that the channel went down. It was simply when I looked to find it, it was not there, as with many of you experiencing the same. Thereon, of course, I issued my own complaint to YouTube and was gearing up to take matters to a legal platform if necessary. Thousands upon thousands of you galvanized, expressing your outrage at this treatment, which in effect was an attack on the freedom of speech. Whilst it had started as a copyright issue, this was resolved. Viacom CBS and I resolved the matter in precisely the method that YouTube encouraged, by YouTube's own procedures, thus saving them time and effort of adjudicating upon the dispute. We resolved it. But what YouTube did not do was follow their own procedures by checking that it had been resolved and thus halting the automatic termination of the channel. This then meant that the channel went down, and there was a somewhat labyrinthine procedures to try and bring to their attention. Fortunately, as a combination of my own overtures and those of all of you valuable viewers across your emails, your feedback on YouTube, and the tweets that you issued, and I've expressed my gratitude elsewhere to specific YouTubers and those with Twitter accounts that galvanize their own supporters to ensure that not only was my material returned, but this attack upon free speech by stymieing a channel when it ought not to have been stymied was addressed. The result was, on Monday, that the channel was restored, And now I will continue to provide you with my excellent and unrivaled analyses of narcissism. Of course, as is often the case with these things, it has resulted in a large jump in subscribers. It's resulted in me having more followers on Instagram and Twitter, as more people want to know what's going on. Who is this chap H.G. Tudor and what is his work? And of course, those of you who already know how excellent it is, wanting to defend the loss of the channel. I've explained, of course, that those that detract from the truth, those that accuse others of spewing hate but engage in hypocritical behaviours themselves, will not grind down this channel nor any of the others. I've explained that those who are sensible, constructive and embrace the evidence in a reasonable fashion far outnumber those bigoted idiots who sit entrenched in their narrow-minded, blinkered mindsets. They think that they wield the sword of truth on their side. They do not, and it becomes all the more apparent to those of us that do. This was not only a victory in terms of the return of my channel and the provision of information which has saved lives, that has saved livelihoods, and has enabled people to keep their sanity. All you need do is look at the testimonials and the thousands of emails that I have received over the years that have confirmed that to be the case. This is a channel that provides education. It helps people understand what has happened to them, people that they love. It helps them make sense of the world and the way that it works. Many people have observed that it's like being given the keys to understanding life itself, once you understand more about narcissists and the narcissistic dynamic. This is not a channel laughing at fluffy little cat videos or telling you how to make a chocolate brownie. Not that there's anything wrong with those channels, but this is heavyweight educational material, and it is not something that should ever be removed. I will therefore continue with the provision of my videos explaining all there is to know about narcissism, and of course continuing with my analyses of prominent examples, since that garners so much attention and interest. Thank you to those of you who have supported my return. I would remind you that you may have been unsubscribed as a consequence of the channel's hiatus. Please do ensure that you subscribe and that you activate the notification bell. But the point of this video is to place on record precisely what happened, that there was a dispute, that the parties resolved that dispute amicably, and YouTube were slow to implement the resolution of that dispute, resulting in the unfortunate and unnecessary termination of the channel, which of course now has been resolved. Let us now forge forward together in ensuring that more and more people become aware of this information that provides you with the unrivaled insight into the world of narcissism. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.